Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk movies, something that we love seeing, we love doing, we love talking about. It's kind of our life sometimes. We even have a podcast around it, and we like bears too, so why not blend both into one podcast? I am very thrilled to be joined by my wonderful co-host, Jim Pugliafico. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Hi there, and welcome to the show. Thanks, Brad. Looking forward to a great discussion tonight about Avengers Endgame.
Mm-hmm. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will. How's it going?
It's going great. Brad, Jim, what's snapping?
Ha! We've survived the snapture, or have we? Question mark. Good to be back with you guys. Man, it was super weird not being here last week. I've been on this weird overnight shift for work. Hashtag salary life. I got a good job. I can't complain too much, but I was really bummed to miss La Llorona. But back in the saddle again, and what a big show to be back for. As was already mentioned, we are going to be talking all things Avengers Endgame on this week's show. And it looks like we've got a bunch of people already hanging out with us in the live chat. So, as much as we like to talk about movies, we love to hear your thoughts about movies as well. So definitely hop into that live chat, say hello, let us know your thoughts on the film as we go. Just in case there's anybody listening who hasn't seen Avengers Endgame yet, we're going to talk about the film for a very short period of time, spoiler free. I assume most people have seen this already because otherwise the internet would have spoiled you a million times over between this and Game of Thrones. But we'll give fair spoiler warning before we start throwing those spoilers out nilly-willy. Guys, are you ready to just jump into this movie discussion and get this mother fracker rocking and rolling?
We could stall, we could segue, we could ask about the weather, ask how everything's going. But, everyone's here to listen to Avengers talk. Let's talk Avengers.
I'm ready.
Well, then, in that case, here we go. Our discussion of Avengers Endgame. All right. So, man, the live chat is blowing up. Just want to say hi to Mark, Bruce, Jordan, William, JP, Tom, so many folks in the chat. Glad to have all of you with us. Tom says that I apparently look a little sunburned. It could be the bright light on my face, although we did see Tom at FurFest over the weekend, and we were in the pool for much of the weekend. So that could be it. I may have gotten a little sun, Tom. Maybe I need to powder.
It's a computer generated effect.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, we bumped up the budget on the show.
What this is. So we were going to wait, but now's the right time. We're releasing a series of Movie Bears podcast action figures, and because of this, we now get to release Battle Damage Brad, which is another figure. Everyone go out and buy it. It's only $9.99. Proceeds go to a very, very, very good cause, and that's me seeing more movies.
Battle Damage Brad also comes with a unique action feature, but I have to tell you what it is when we're not on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hey.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, let's get this started. Will, you're the biggest comic geek I know, and I love and adore that about you. There are many things I love and adore about you, but right now, that's the one that's most relevant. I know you've been super jazzed for this movie, the culmination of 20 plus films, a decade plus of movies. So it seems only fitting that you kick off our movie discussion this week. You probably don't have to spend a ton of time with the setup on this one, but give us a little bit, and spoiler free, of course, whether this is worth checking out in theaters. I think we all know the answer, waiting for rental or skipping entirely. Go!
Okay, so here's the build-up, what you need to know for Avengers Endgame. All right, so the year is 2008, and Iron Man comes out, and it's about this industrial. No, I'm not going to go through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. We will be here all day. No, this is the 21st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Avengers Endgame, and it's the direct sequel to Avengers Infinity War, which was the 19th film and came out around this time last year. I guess to talk about this one even spoiler-free, you have to talk about the last one with spoilers. So as we know from Avengers Infinity War, the universe has been absolutely wrecked. Thanos has acquired all of the Infinity Stones and has used them to snap away half of every living being in the entire universe. So this movie picks up where that film leaves off. There's survivors, people that weren't snapped away, and they have decided that they need to find a way to reverse or undo or stop Thanos' actions at using whatever means necessary. We'll talk about those means in spoiler section, but I think that's enough setup for right now. From a quality perspective, I've been pretty vocal about how much I've enjoyed this entire franchise, kind of start to finish. I think that it's easy to like suffer from superhero fatigue, and I get that. But when I think about like overall blockbusters, there's a lot of trash out there. There's a lot of just bad big budget films out there. And I think the Marvel films have pretty consistently found interesting ways of capturing their themes, capturing their characters, moving the story forward while also inhabiting whichever individual storyline needs to be told at that individual time. So this feels like such a triumphant swan song to this entire Infinity Saga. 21 films of lore, of characters coming together, mashing together, interacting and bouncing off one another, creating a world that's at first small and builds into this not just global, but this universal scale. It's been impressive and breathtaking to see all of this happen. And this film met and exceeded all of my expectations. There were things that legitimately surprised me. There were things that felt like very satisfying payoffs to storylines that have been 11 years in the making. We got to see, I call them hero moments, just the moments where like these badass characters get to do something memorable on screen in some way, shape, or form. And we got to see hero moments from so many of these characters in different ways. The shot composition is wonderful. The tone is wonderful. The way the score is utilized is perfect for me. This is a really, really, really good movie. And it almost feels unfair that this franchise has been so consistently good, whereas everything that's come along and tried to replicate it and kind of steal the formula has failed so dramatically in so many different ways. I don't know what else to say about this. I think everyone's probably seen this already, or at least most have. And it's cleared $1.2 billion. It's broken all, and that was in its first 5 days of release. It's made so much money, and it's going to make so much more. It topped the one weekend the budget numbers by like 150% of what the previous record holder was. This is not just a film. This isn't just the capstone to a saga, but this is a cultural touchstone. Like people are going to be talking about this film and this franchise for some years to come, and for good reason. So I'm very enthusiastic about the film, and I'm very enthusiastic to talk about it in more detail when we can. But for right now, I just want to hear y'all's broad stroke thoughts.
Real quick, Will, did you just say this movie was a capstone?
Starkly put, yes.
The Avengers puns write themselves. All right. Sounds like you enjoyed this one a lot, Will. And babe, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, God, it's been almost a generation, right? That these movies have been since they started. So kids who kind of started with like the Iron Man movies back in, what was it, 2008 or something like that. or even earlier. I forget when Iron Man came out. See the culmination here of like the whole saga. And as you know, I haven't been a, really a vocal fan or an involved fan in the series. And I've enjoyed some of the films. Okay. They never really make my top 10 of the year. But this one felt different to me. This one felt, I enjoyed this one, first of all, right off the bat. And that's because of a few different things. It felt different. It seems like it was way different than all the other movies, and probably my favorite Marvel film of the whole series, with the possible exception of like Guardians of the Galaxy 1, which kind of holds a special place in my heart. This is probably my favorite Marvel of them all, mainly because I thought I was just in wonder of like the job that this movie had to do was almost impossible. We've seen movies with lesser difficult jobs screw it up really badly. And so in this one, we're a little worried going in, but what we got was a script that was amazing. Like, it wrapped up the saga in what I think is a fulfilling fashion. It gave almost every character a complete, kind of ending to their arc, whatever arc they had, and didn't just kind of, toss them off or forget about them, but gave something that tied into the story and was quite enjoyable and rewarding. The tone of this movie felt way different. At least the first hour and a half or something felt way different than any Marvel movie, right? You didn't have like any real action scenes until kind of toward the end. And I'm not going to give anything away here, but the tone of the movie was much more focused on characters. And I'm a character person, right? And we got to know these characters a little bit. We got to see their stories kind of percolate and given a chance to grow through meaningful character in a relation. So and then, to mention the score, I think the score in this movie was really great. Now, I can't hum any of the themes from this movie. I mean, it's not that memorable to me, but during the movie, I thought it suited the movie very well. In the quiet moments and in the action scenes. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's fine. I think it's, better than fine. I think it's a very good, probably the best finale that I can imagine of a kind of a movie series coming together like this in a long time. So I give them props. The $1.2 billion. Yeah. They're going to make a ton of money. I don't know if another film, it remains to be seen whether another like superhero film would ever top the quality and performance of this movie, but I did like it quite a bit, and I was engaged throughout the whole thing. Yes, I did have to pee one time. The movie was 3 hours long. I did use my Run Pee app. I did use the Run Pee app and went at the second pee time, which was about 2 hours in.
Okay.
Which was perfect, and I won't spoil anything about that until we get into spoilers. But yeah, so there were a few people that kind of left the movie theater, I think, to pee in ours. They're not all camels like some of you. So anyway, great film. I think I would say go see it, but I think pretty much everybody we know eventually is going to go see it. I hope. I saw some people in the chat here say they're going to wait for it to come out on streaming or DVD, and maybe there's, money reasons behind that or whatever. But I would suggest if you get a chance to see it, go see it.
Yeah, if you wait until home release, just know that there's a good probability you'll be spoiled at some point, and some people are okay with that. Just know that it's going to be hard to wait that long.
Right.
Babe, we have a question in the chat from William Riley. He says there's a quote Run P app ? Would you maybe educate folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Go look it up. Search for it. It's called Run P. That's the name of it. And basically, any movie that's out, they give you, they have people that see the movies, and they pick out times where are the most optimal times to kind of leave the theater for 3 or 4 minutes, do your business, and come back. and they'll lay that out for you, and they'll lay that out for you in kind of a non-spoilery fashion. They might say, okay, when this character says, hooray for our team, that's the time to go, because nothing else happens after that but a couple of little comic moments that don't mean anything to the plot. And not only that, but you can hit a spoilers button and you can find out exactly what happens during that time that you're gone, if you want to find out later. So I find it really good, especially for these long movies, just to kind of pick out one spot in the movie where if I have to go out, I'll pick out that P spot and head out, do my thing, come back, and I haven't really missed much. So I think the app is really worth it.
And not just does it help you to pee, but it helps the people like that you go to see a movie with. Like, babe, I love and adore you. But before the Run Pee app, every time Jim would like go to the bathroom and then he'd come back, I'd have to like fill him in by whispering what happened while he was
Jim,
gone.
You were one of those?
And so now through the magic of the Run P app, it sounds like they're sponsoring us. I wish they would. Jim can just hit that spoiler button, read exactly what he missed, and then not miss a Pete.
I don't think a Run Poop app would work as well. So I'm trying to think of something. I'm trying to think of something we could come up with, to make money, as I'm sure the Run P guys are. But Run Poop probably isn't it.
Probably not. Yeah, thank goodness for that app, because I did not get up to pee during this movie, but I also was managing my bladder like a mofo. You know what I mean? Like I was planning okay, how soon before the movie can I start drinking? How much can I drink? Like, how do I get through this? Because I didn't want to get up and leave, but that's pretty awesome. For me, man, Jim, you kind of underscored that this is the finale, right? And we've been talking a lot about superhero fatigue. And going into this movie, I was not super excited because I'm just, man, I'm so tired of seeing all these Marvel movies. I'm really over it. So I was like, oh, fuck. Not only do we got to go see this movie, but it's a 3 fucking hour movie. And I will say, I really loved this movie a lot. It surpassed all of my expectations. And I would really love it if these movies would come to an end. Like if this really was the big finish. Obviously, we're going to have more fucking Marvel superhero movies till the end of time. But I definitely, if I didn't have bad hat hair, I would take my hat off to Marvel for creating something incredibly cool with this culmination of 10 plus years of films. It's hard to wrap everything up, in just one movie. They kind of gave us the setup in Infinity War, and now, of course, we get a lot of the payoff, and we'll talk more about that in spoilers. But it's pretty amazing what they've accomplished here, and I'm gonna miss, I think, some of these characters, and I'm glad we got a chance to see this with friends as well in a crowded theater. Just from an experience perspective, it's very rare outside of a film festival to hear people talking during the movie in a non taking care of their annoying child sort of way. But when great things were happening in the film, people are cheering during this movie. People are making funny comments, and it was allowable, I guess, because it was, it's a social movie in a way. We're all going through this social experience together. So I cut people a little bit of slack, although there was a guy that kept getting on his phone during the movie. And I wish that I had taken my giant Infinity Gauntlet with me into the film. So I could have just snapped him out of existence. By the way, Jordan, all of the stones are there, my friend. I know you said it looks like one of them is missing, but they're all there. So that settles that. But this was great. I mean, yeah, it was 3 hours long, but it didn't feel like 3 hours long to me, which is a really big surprise. I think they smartly set this up. There's some really great editing, helped the pacing of this film. I never really got to a point where I was like, oh, fuck. If I could look at my watch without blinding the whole theater and check the time, I would. So I really like this a lot. I don't want to, extend the conversation any longer than we have to, because I think there's a lot we can talk about spoilers wise. But I did want to ask a question. Will, I assume you saw this at an Alamo Draft House, who should also be one of our sponsors. Did they allow for any of like the fun fan cheering talking? Because I know they're usually pretty.
No, so the thing that they don't allow is they don't allow talking. But like what they do allow is like cheering and interacting with the film, So like you can't turn to your neighbor and go, "What just happened?" or "Hey, what are you doing later?" Like that's not loud. But like when something cool happens on screen, everyone's like, "Yeah, fuck yeah!" Like that's all like within fair game.
Good.
So both screenings, and that's and that's all the screenings out there. But it was like it's definitely appreciated for a thing like this because both of the in-game screenings I saw, because I saw it twice, because I loved it. It reminded me a lot of when we go to see a film at a festival. We talk about this sometimes on the show that there's like this weird festival high where like everyone is at this sort of heightened engagement level and everyone's like laughing a little louder than they normally would, cheering a little more than they would, or being scared a little bit more. It just sort of happens at festivals. And this film, I noticed, had that same reaction with both of the audiences that I saw. And I've only really seen that for films that really feel like cultural touchstones for whatever reason. So, of course, this film and the last one I can think of that had exactly this impact was probably Force Awakens, which was just sort of this like, oh my God, Star Wars is back. What's going to happen with this franchise? Everyone was so bought into like the experience in the moment. And so, yeah, it was so fucking fun. The first time I did not use the restroom at all, which was Herculean feat. Like normally I have to like, an hour and a half movie. I've got to find a pee break in there somewhere. But this time I did the exact same thing, Brad. I was like, all right. So I'll just kind of slow down on water today. And I did get one for the movie, but I just kind of sipped it and kind of paced myself through so that when I went and saw it the second time, I knew exactly the right moment. I didn't have to run pee app. I could just go like, oh yeah, that's the scene.
Right. So, Will, you were saying, did you actually see it 3 times or twice?
I ended up seeing it twice. So I bought 2 tickets. I bought one for the Friday night and one for Monday night. And then I ended up winning some tickets to go see it on Thursday. And some friends wanted to do some stuff Monday night. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'll just see it Thursday and Friday and then refund my Monday tickets.
Gotcha.
So I only saw it twice. But
excellent. Yeah, there's some things. I don't know if we're quite ready yet, but when we get into spoilers, there's some things. I mean, there's some things that didn't. I think the film is a home run overall, but I think there's some things to nitpick about maybe a little bit in spoilers when we get there. Mostly things related to the plot. Because there is a lot of plot in this movie, even though I said it was a character, more of a character-based movie. There is a lot of plot. There's a lot we have to do since the end of Infinity War, right? So, and kind of how that came about and the whys and wherefores. There's some I think some things to explore there when we get into spoilers.
I think now is probably as good a time as any. I can't really think of anything else from a non-spoiler perspective to say beyond, see this movie when you can. I understand not everyone can get to it while it's in theaters. So, we certainly don't want to spoil you. So this is the time where we, just kind of reiterate. We're going to give you a few moments before we go into spoilers.
And probably a good PSA for everyone at this point is to remember that there are people who haven't seen it. So not just now, but like be kind with social media spoilers, everyone. Not everyone has the same like privilege to be able to see things right away for whatever reason. So just be cool.
Well, and I think that bears saying because we were at an event over the weekend. Which is basically just like a weekend long, pool party, kind of a special event that we go to in Phoenix every year. And, it was interesting. There was one fucking guy in the pool who was going around deliberately spoiling the movie. He was drunk. He was obnoxious. He's tossing out spoilers. And, a guy was like, dude, like, you need to shut your mouth. Like, be quiet. Like, you're in a pool full of people who can't avoid you. Like, stop. At least on social media, you can try to avoid reading things. Hopefully people will put spoiler tags. Sometimes they don't. You can try and navigate around it. But in a setting like that, like, there's just no escaping it. You know what I mean? And the guy, to his credit, once someone spoke up and said something to him, was like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I guess everybody hasn't seen it."
Yeah, and I don't, and I think some people are just more sensitive to that than others too. And it's not, I don't even want to call it a flaw or a personality flaw. It's just that they're just not. We do movies week in and week out, right? I mean, and I think we're probably on the very sensitive end of sensitive for spoilers, and we don't want to spoil anybody without them coming to us and saying, "Here's what I want to know." But I think some people just don't kind of get that concept. And today, kind of on social media, the thing is, oh, I want to be the first one to post this cool meme of this character in this position doing this, and you do it, and unbeknownst to even you may not think it's a spoiler, but some people, the more sensitive ones like us and other people, may think it's a spoiler. So it's hard to say use your common sense and don't. It's easy to say that, use your common sense and don't post spoilers and stuff. And for overt spoilers, yes, but there's also things that you post that you don't think are spoilers that maybe are. So just be careful, give it a second consideration before you post anything.
And it's especially frustrating given that, like, I don't know, like, maybe I'm a little more hard-edged on this, but it's harder for me to give benefits of the doubt when, like, literally every third post for the last, like, week has been hashtag don't spoil the Endgame. So it feels like it would be hard for someone to think like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to spoil this. If, like,
Well, and what blows my mind, and the guys are talking about this in the chat right now, like, a lot of people have been really respectful about spoilers for Endgame, but we had a giant Game of Thrones episode happen this weekend that people were not at all, like, careful about spoilers about. And I think it speaks to, like, people's care about sometime, right? Like, oh my God, Avengers is that one thing that I love more than anything else. You better not fucking spoil me. I won't spoil you. But then, Game of Thrones may be something you care about less. Then all of a sudden, it's suddenly okay to give spoilers. I think part of that is, like, when you're seeing a movie, hopefully your phone is put away. You're not live reacting online as you're watching the movie in a movie theater, hopefully. Whereas with something like Game of Thrones, you're sitting there, you're in your living room. If you're like me in that episode, it was super tense. There were many moments where I wanted to check my phone just to, like, lighten my mood. And, I didn't, thankfully, because it would have been spoiled. But it's just not great. Be kind. Yeah. Be nice.
Be kind. Be cool. Don't spoil.
Be cognizant.
If you enjoy a thing, don't try to take away the enjoyment that other people might experience with that thing.
Yeah.
Just ask yourself, what would Captain America do when it comes to spoilers? I want that PSA now, guys.
Yeah.
Can we please get Chris Evans to do a spoiler PSA? That'd be amazing. Okay.
Let's find out.
All right. So we'll tweet it from our account, Jim, if you don't mind. Let's ask him if he'll do a Captain America spoiler warning PSA. But all right, we've side chatted enough about another topic to give you time to step away if needed. Spoilers are officially fair game here in about 30 seconds. While we awkwardly ramble, that should give you an opportunity to step away. We're not going to be doing any plugs this episode. We wanted to devote all of the time to the movie discussion. So don't worry about swinging back around for plugs at the end if you're listening live. Of course, if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, you'd have the time index in the show notes anyway, but it's all Avengers all the time. So nothing to worry about. Here we go. Spoilers are officially fair game. Where do we want to start?
I'll start. I guess we know that at the end of Infinity War, Thanos did his snap, and half of the living, I don't know if it's the living things or half of the people in the universe basically were vaporized and they disappeared, along with some of our superheroes and their family members, and loved ones in the movie, as we see coming back into Endgame. So that was a big talk when that happened. It was really a crushing moment. I mean, it was a really shocking, one of those moments where in the theater, you'll hear the air get sucked out of the theater when that happens. And that did happen at the end of Infinity War. And what I loved about this movie at the beginning is how it drew us right back into that moment. Not by recapping like last time on the Infinity Saga. I mean, it gave us a brand new scene from a different perspective that had the same emotional gut punch as the end of Infinity War. And that was a scene with Hawkeye and his family. Hawkeye, who was kind of away from the action when the snapping happened, having to experience his family basically being disappeared. And that scene within the first like 3 minutes of the movie, you're punched in the gut again, and you're sucked right back into the stakes, right, of this world. And I thought the movie did that fantastically.
And to the film's credit, and also the last film's credit, so all of this film and the last film were sort of written and shot sort of in unison because of everything. And I was reading a thing with the screenwriters today, and apparently that Hawkeye sequence was written for the first film and was going to be like the way the film ended. And as they were looking through everything, they realized like that wouldn't give as much like, well, who's Hawkeye? He hasn't been in this movie so far. How do we do that? And so I love the fact that this such sharply written scene that does such a good job, like everyone involved, the writers, the directors, they all came together and like pieced together these puzzle pieces in the most effective way to keep us in that moment, to keep us feeling just that gut punch, keep us feeling just that the immediacy of that loss. Like, to me, what I really took away from that is that there's so many ways that this probably could have been fucked up because it's not just telling one story, it was telling two stories and dividing it in exactly the right spot for the most emotional payoff.
I agree. This definitely had some good setup and some good emotional stakes here, but I actually was a little pulled out of the scene for a second because, Thanos snaps and 50% of all life disappears, right? How many kids does Hawkeye have and his wife? Like each person has a 50-50 chance of disappearing, and like his whole family disappeared.
Yeah, he was on the shit end of that probability scale.
I guess he got really really screwed over by the stats. I was surprised at least like one person didn't live, but I guess if he's going to go on to be like a ninja killing assassin,
fucking murderer.
Yeah. You had to have that set up. But we've got some time left in the show, and there's so much to talk about. Definitely love that scene. I want to jump into. I don't think we have to go beat for beat through the movie. I don't think we.
Oh no,
it would take 12 episodes to do that. But what did you guys think of Captain Marvel showing up to save Iron Man, Nebula, and Rocket in sort of their like moment of desperation? They're on the ship, they're out of fuel, they're about to die. Tony's recording goodbye movies. Were you like surprised to see her show up that way?
Go ahead, Jim.
I mean, it was a plot service moment, right? I mean, that was there because plot. We needed Iron Man in this movie. And I guess, I mean, I'm not, remember, I don't read the comics. Maybe it happened in the comics and it's canon and blah, blah, blah. That's great. But to me, it seemed like very convenient that it happened. Ultimately, I'm glad it happened, but it just seemed like, oh, here she is. She was just in a movie we saw. Here she comes. Boom. She saves the day. Gone again. So, yeah, it seemed a little like layered on, I guess you could say for me. It didn't really hold much. I think people cheered when it happened because they were happy to see a character like Captain Marvel that they really liked. And that was cool to see her. But in terms of like storytelling wise, it seemed a little tacked on. But that's just the way it landed for me.
I think one thing that'll be helpful, I think, is to sort of put the comics out of mind, because this is While there's definitely like an Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, and Infinity Saga set of comics that are very loosely drawn upon as the source material, the stones, the 50%, the coming back after all those odds to try to stop them. This film tied up all the loose ends of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and so it was more so than probably any of the other films, was more beholden to its own lore than it was the comic book lore. And what I like so much about the Captain Marvel scene is that it's setting up something that is, I think, important for this universe, and that's this film was the end of, and not for every character for different reasons, but this is the end of the story of the 6 original Avengers. Like that particular team. They're the ones that were the kickstarted our phase 1. They're the ones that were the big team of Avengers 1. And they're the ones that had the majority of the story focus in this one, and rightfully so. That's the way this story is coming full circle. But at the same time, they used this opportunity here, not as much for storytelling, although of course there's a narrative reason for it, but this is them passing the baton to the next set of characters. You know, when we are moving into phase 4, whatever those movies are, they've only announced a few things and they're very tight-lipped intentionally. We know that some certain characters are going to play a big part of that. You know, your Black Panthers, your Captain Marvels, your Doctor Stranges, and a few other things on the horizon. So what I saw Captain Marvel's introduction here being is just she's in a position to pick up that baton after some of these characters have their exits at later points.
Well, and it's interesting too. Malibu Bearby commented on this in the chat in terms of, you know, them not really maybe knowing what to do with Captain Marvel. There was no point, he says, besides her rescuing Tony. And it's interesting because, you know, throughout the movie, they keep finding reasons for her to be away. And like narratively, Will, what you're saying makes absolute sense. Like this is the capstone film for that original Avengers teams. Obviously, Captain Marvel is going to go on to continue to be a thing. We're getting more films. But it is interesting how convenient, like, I have a whole galaxy to save. I can't just focus on Earth. And then, you know, she shows up again at the end at the most opportune moment. And, you know, that's a hard, I don't know, that's a hard line to walk when you've just introduced like the most, I mean, she's really the most powerful of all of them. Isn't she, right? She got her powers from the Tesseract.
Yeah.
Like she can fucking fly through spaceships and destroy them like in a hot second, as we saw her do at the very end of the film. And could she have been the one to wear the gauntlet? Like if she had been set up that way, that would have subverted, you know, the big character death there at the end. We're in spoilers. We can say it, right? Iron Man dies. Mm-hmm. He puts on the gauntlet. I know. So it's wait,
nobody dies in comics. Come on, we know this already.
So it's like I totally get it. Like they want to have Captain Marvel, they want their cake, they want to eat it too. But that actually kind of took me out of the film a little bit. I wish they had found a more clever way to still utilize her, still be as powerful as she is, but not be like, oh, she's going to be off screen 95% of the movie, and we'll just have her show up for plot when it's convenient. I almost wish they had waited to do Captain Marvel until after Endgame, until after all of this had wrapped up, and then introduce her.
She got 2 big cheers, and it was really the 2 big moments that she had in the movie. It was rescuing Tony, and please help me with the name of the other character that was on that ship. Nebula. I should know that, but I don't. And then when she basically destroys Thanos's mother of all fucking spaceships, kind of at the end, right? She gets at least in our audience, she got a big reaction there. So I think the fans loved it. I think the fans loved those moments. Even though they may have felt like maybe not, I don't know, like I said, a little out of the blue, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, I like the character. I love the part. I love that they needled her about the haircuts. I was rolling on that stuff because, I mean, it was a thing in the movie. Like every time she appeared, she had like a different hairstyle.
Yeah.
And they were on her about that. And it was kind of funny. I forget whether it was Rocket or Thor that was giving her a hard time about it, or maybe even Quill. I don't remember.
So can we talk about like the central mechanic of this film? So
Sure.
in order to save everybody, right? Because at the beginning of the movie, they go to Titan where Thanos is, and he no longer has the stones. He used the stones to destroy themselves. It almost killed them in the process. So now they've got to use time travel, right? And thank goodness for Pym Particles and Ant-Man and Tony Stark, everybody working together to figure this out. How did we feel about
time machine?
How did we feel about the time travel mechanic to fix everything?
I mean, it was fine. It's fine for this movie. It was the only way, really. I mean, the only way they were going to fix this was to go back in time, because it did happen. We did see it happen. And it was, I think they did it as well as they could do it. I have, I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with time travel stuff in movies and TV anyway. It seems like a very cheap, I guess, like construct to kind of just basically undo and redo stuff all the time. And that's fine. It's shorthand for like, we'll write ourselves into a corner and then we'll back up the time and then we'll do it again. But it was pretty well done here, I thought. I mean, you can't think about it though. You cannot think about the time reversal constructs in these movies. For instance, just one I'll mention, and there's probably a dozen more. Cap at some point near the end of the movie goes back to put the stones back or something like that, right? And he's supposed to come back in like 5 seconds. He doesn't show up. We find out in a little while that he actually stayed in that time. So does that mean he was never existed in the time we're in for the time that he was back there doing, hanging with his wife and being, does that mean he never existed like as Captain America in the Infinity War movie?
Well, I think, go ahead, Will. Yeah.
So one of the rules of time travel in this particular thing is that time doesn't necessarily rewrite time. What time does is, like, when you adjust time, the future is now your past is now your future. Anyway, so like if I did a thing now, like if I went through time, blah, 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 did things, and then I went back in and to a different point, like I already was in time doing those things. I just also exist there in conjunction with it. There is a bit of an issue I have with that very, very, very last example of it, but it's super tiny comparatively.
So you'd run into yourself doing that thing that you already did.
Well, you would make sure you don't.
In this case, what he probably did was just he retired, right? Like, this is jumping ahead, and I'll double back around to the mechanic, but like at that particular moment, he retired, so he didn't run into himself because Captain America, once he unthawed in 2009 or whenever that was, he unthawed, was just running around doing stuff. And then there's another one that's just kind of hanging out in this house with Peggy, living a life with her, sort of off the grid and married and stuff like that. So it wouldn't have affected any of the things. Now it would affect like what happened to Peggy. So there's some stuff there, but she didn't have a lot of story during that particular time frame anyway. So it's hard to say it. But I mean, like
essentially, sorry, Will, just real quick. So there's two Captain Americas during that time period, but only one is being Captain America, babe. The other one,
apparently, because the one that went back to be with his wife, we don't know that he was even doing Captain America shit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like, you have one. No, there's two.
But there was the old Captain America, the new Captain America that went back in time, and then apparently when he went back to do the stones, he stayed back there. So there was another guy there.
The old Captain America is the Captain America who went back in time and put the stones back and stayed. He just naturally aged. So he went back to 1970. He stayed. So that Captain America that shows up at the end is the same one who just went back in time 5 seconds earlier. He's just, 60 years older.
Yeah, it's
because
now like,
So there's just two. I mean, really, it's just one Captain America. It's just time, travel fuckery.
His storyline is like if my storyline is like I was born in 82 and now it's 2019 and I have a straight path. think of Steve Rogers' storyline in this one as here, frozen, starts here again, goes through time, goes back in time, and lives to be an old man. Like, so it's the one guy. Now, at one point, there's 2 instances of him operating at the same time, and that would be during that little stretch between when he unthawed and when he went back in time. That's the little stretch where 2 Steve Rogers existed.
Which means in the earlier Captain America films, when we see Peggy as an old woman and dying, she'd already been living, I guess, with Cap in retirement or whatever, in secret, right? So when they have those like heartfelt scenes, you know, her husband's, I guess, at home or like down the hall or something, getting a cup of coffee, you know. But
and she knows that she can't tell him what's going to happen because so.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to explain. I just don't want to have to like think of all those workarounds like when I'm watching the story, because I think it robs from the actual story a little bit.
Well, and JP in the chat earlier said this movie really became Back to the Future 2. And they even reference Back to the Future 2. And they try to even like climb out of that hole, I think, by joking about Back to the Future 2 and saying, you know, you going back and changing the past doesn't change the future. It creates an alternate timeline, right? The Sorcerer Supreme, like Tilda Swinton even like explains this whole thing, you know, to Bruce Banner when he goes back for the Time Stone. And I think it's an attempt to try and simplify things so that we don't have to keep explaining like all these causality loop paradoxes and bootstrap paradoxes. But I think in the end, it just ends up making it even more complicated and hard to follow in a lot of ways.
I spent like 2 minutes after she said her lines trying to go back and say, wait, what did she say again? Like,
well, here's
your present is your future.
Right. Here's a really good example, right? So after we saw the movie, we all came back to our house. Well, we went with Steven and Sam, and we talked for like 2 hours about the film, and we asked questions and we clarified things. And I was like, cool, we all got it. We all know how it works. We're good. All right. It all makes sense. Went to bed, woke up an hour after going to bed, and I'm like, wait, fuck. Loki got the Tesseract back in 2011 and disappeared. So, like, does Loki, like, reappear to be put in jail and go to Asgard? Do we have an alternate dimension now where Loki's now operating out of? You know, like, it just broke it again.
So this we have the answer to, because that's what that's what the Ancient One, that's what Tilda Swinton was talking about, how if one of the stones gets removed, it basically creates sort of like a branch storyline, which is exactly what happened in that version of the past Avengers, because that's when the Tesseract gets taken by Loki. So there's a split storyline somewhere, some alternate dimension that's not part of the main storyline, where Loki's running around with that. And hey, coming this fall on Disney Plus
TV show
is the Loki TV show, which I would put dollars to donuts has to do with this era Loki, before he's had his change of heart, running around being kind of like a menace with that.
But does this Loki then come back to that moment to like be arrested and stuff so that the original like stuff can play out? Or do we now have like 2 other split timelines out there as a result?
It would just be
nowhere.
It would just be one split storyline off that one. So that's what the Ancient One was saying there. Not to get too deep down the rabbit hole, but like if someone takes the stone, cool, whatever. That the timeline that the person that took it on is the same, but now they have a stone. But now there's an alternate one where now these people don't have a stone, and like in their example, like Dormammu from the Doctor Strange movie would have come in and fucked them all up, and they wouldn't have had a stone to stop it. So in this one, there is an alternate dimension somewhere where the Tesseract is in Loki's hands, and whatever happens because of that happens.
Right. So it is a little problematic when you have to stop. We've been talking about this for 12 and a half minutes. When you have to stop and try and explain how your mechanic works.
That's why you can't think about it too much. I think if you just enjoy the movie on the surface, I think it's fine. I think it works. It works fine. If you start to bring yourself down those rabbit holes,
I think can't think about it.
Maybe a lot of it can be explained, but it's like it's almost almost takes away from the enjoyment of the. It doesn't add to the movie.
For me personally, though, I will say I loved the time travel mechanics. I think it did add, at least for me personally. Mileage will vary, but I really love the way they set this up, and they set it up with purpose too, because not only did it serve like what's the narrative function of game?
No, right.
But more importantly, what it was it allowed us to do a greatest hits. And that's the most important, I think, part of this whole thing anyways, is that this is both saying farewell to this storyline while also revisiting some key moments. And we got to revisit the battle for New York. We got to revisit, that sort of monumental moment when Star-Lord started dancing on that planet and letting us know, like, holy shit, who is this guy in this movie? And now, which is what we got in Guardians of the Galaxy. When he started doing that, and you hear the music, and you see this dude who you don't know his background, it's like it was a game changer in its own way.
I will say I loved seeing that Star-Lord scene from an external perspective, right? Because we see him start like with the music kick in and he's dancing, and you can you're hearing it from his perspective, but then it switches right to the characters that are watching him, and he's like singing along to the song like a dead tone deaf cat who can't hear himself, like dancing around like a stupid person,
and he gets punched
it was amazing.
Like I like that. I feel like for the most part, the scenes that needed to have a lot of time spent on them, we got to see new reformed Hulk, seeing what like raged out Hulk looked like in Battle of New York and responding to that. We got to revisit what Loki's mechanics were like with the shape-shifting, and then that led to the Captain America fight with the America's Ass line. We got to see one of my favorite scenes in the absolute movie was when Captain America gets in the elevator, and it basically is a role reversal of what we saw in Winter Soldier.
Hail Hydra.
The pause, you think they were about to have this badass fight with these guys like we saw, and then he does the Hail Hydra line.
Because he knows what's coming.
Because he knows what's coming. And to me, what this really showed was, from a fan service perspective or a story perspective or whatever, it was fun to see that callback. But I think it also showed us Captain America being more savvy. Like it's showing us that Captain America is more than just an idealized version. He's become a little sort of more streetwise sort of in his time since being an Avenger. Like he figured out a way to sort of like use this thing against them without having to like, well, I have to stop Hydra because Hydra's bad. He's like, no, this is more important. So I'm going to tell this lie. I thought that was really neat from a character growth perspective.
Yeah. I think, for all this talk we've had about the time travel stuff, it did give us some great moments in the movie. And I think the Captain America stuff at the end, I think was fantastic. And very unexpected, and it was a really emotional like payoff. It was an emotional reward for people who got through all the Captain America movies, which I thought were very good, by the way. That's the one thread that I would go back and watch probably. And also the Tony Stark stuff. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Tony Stark character or Iron Man in general, but I thought the stuff like going back and getting those moments with his father, different actor, I think, right, than his father in the other movies, but if I'm not mistaken. But I thought that was great too, because wasn't his father in this movie the guy who was on Mad Men?
So they used two different ones because younger one was, I will never remember that actor's name. But this was John Slattery, I think.
John Slattery, yeah. But I love that moment that he had with his dad. I thought that was very a kind of emotional, here we go, daddy issues again, right? We can't have any of this shit without daddy issues. So, but I thought it was well done, and it really layered the character for me a lot.
To be fair, the movie balanced it out with Thor and his mommy issues, right? So at least it wasn't all daddy issues.
And that was good too.
And I appreciated that because we were talking about Thor earlier in the chat, and guys, our apologies. The chat is moving really fast. We don't always get to everything. But there was clamoring for Thor. So let's talk about that for a second. Thor gets an opportunity. He killed Thanos in the first 7 minutes of the film or whatever. It really destroyed, right, how he looks at himself, I guess. And he's having a really hard time. And, he's really let himself go. He's fat now. He's
plays video games
and drinks beer all day with his buddies, and he's severely depressed. And so that moment where he gets to go back and talk to his mom Frigga, who, by the way, is funny. She gets more lines in this movie than she did like in the previous
in the Thor movie.
Live. Yeah. But he has this great like moment of closure with her, and I love what she tells him about everybody fails at being who you're supposed to be, but you got to focus on being the best that you are, right?
You are, right.
And that moment where he like summons Mjolnir and it comes to him and he like is crying and he's like, oh my God, I'm still worthy. Like, I did not cheer audibly. Maybe I should have, I don't know, but I was like leaping for joy inside. Thor has been like my favorite character. In this whole series, Dark World, whatever, I kind of forget it exists sometimes. It wasn't that great. But I love the Thor character, and I love kind of seeing this journey that he has been on. And so to see him so reinvigorated by the fact that like he is still worthy and kind of turn things around for himself. And then going into that last battle, welding, the axe and the hammer, that was magic. That was awesome.
This film was all about figuring out the story arcs of the characters and finding interesting ways to move each of them forward. So we've had this interesting arc with Thor, who's basically been trying to figure out his place in everything, whether it be his place in the within his family, within the sort of the monarchy where he exists within all of that. I think he really started to find himself when he became an Avenger and when he became sort of like the liberator of his people in Ragnarok. But he got this new focus in Infinity War, which is like, I'm the one that's supposed to kill Thanos. That's me. That's my job. And when he doesn't, seeing how much it breaks him down in such a way that he doesn't like, he's not like revenge driven, like Hawkeye, and he's not sort of single-minded focused on this thing like Black Widow. He shuts down and breaks down, and I think that that's a remarkably humanizing thing, and I love that the writers did that, because I think they could have very easily just written him as being full of rage this entire this art, and this was so much more satisfying.
Absolutely agreed. And we have a comment from Nick Knack in the chat. And this is actually a question that we had coming out of the movie. Nick Knack says, well, two things. What were the sounds at the end, the hammer striking? Was that the other Thor who got his hammer stolen making a new weapon? I believe that was the sounds of Tony Stark making his first Iron Man armor.
Yes,
that's correct. That was that. But Nick Knack says, because there's a hammerless Thor out there now. So remember, when Captain America goes back in time to put the stones back, he also has Mjolnir because he was able to use it during the battle. He can pick it up. That whole thing from the second Avengers movie was resolved. But ostensibly, I think he takes the hammer back in time with him to put it back on Asgard.
Correct.
When he puts the stone back. So no need for Thor to make a new hammer at that point. Thor might be wondering where his hammer was for, the 5 seconds that it was gone in his timeline. But I think that was the resolution to that. I could be wrong. I don't know.
No, you are
doesn't
perfectly...
Thor have a badder ass weapon now though? Doesn't he have like the not the hammer, but the
Stormbreaker? Yeah,
Stormbreaker, fucking axe thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Brad, you were right on both counts. That sound at the very end, there's no post credit stingers, but there's the sound of bang, 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 like the sound of metal being struck. And it's the exact sound that Tony made when he was making the thing. And they put it there as a way of just more than anything, like not to like hint or like, here's the next thing that's coming.
Yeah.
It's like this was the swan song for the character that started the story. And that was his defining moment, was when he made his armor. And it was calling us back to say basically like, hey, look how long this journey has been.
It was a nice touch, even though there were a lot of groans in the movie theater when people waited for that.
Oh yeah, and people were pissed. People were pissed. Oh my god.
Yeah.
This woman who was sitting in front of us a couple rows down, she stands up and on the way out, she's like, "That was it? we rated around for that. There's been a stinger on every movie and none on this film.
If she wants a stinger to this movie, there's another one coming out in a couple of months. It's called Spider-Man Far From Home, and it is the stinger to this movie. It's the kind of lighthearted epilogue showing one of the characters doing something that's, so that's her stinger. That's what we'll call it.
Hey, so I know we're rapidly running out of time. We have a few more things we probably should discuss. One of them, can we just talk about Black Widow for a second? We haven't talked about her at all this whole show so far, really. So, of course, in order to get the stone, it's either her or Hawkeye that has to die for the Soul Stone, right? And so they kind of have this little fight. Who gets to die? She ends up being the one to die. How do we feel about that being her heroic exit compared to?
Yeah, I thought it worked. I thought it worked well. I thought in that situation, obviously, it was going to be one of them. I think maybe they were setting it up to be Hawkeye because he had kind of turned a bit bad, right? He had kind of turned very questionable motives when he was kind of on his murder spree there, just taking out anybody he thought was a bad guy. So, I mean, they flash it on the screen, drug cartel, so we can just murder all of them. And that happened. So maybe the audience was thinking that, but then I think ultimately in the end, she basically said it, that he had more to go back to, right? He was there fighting to get his family back. And it kind of meant, I think she made the value judgment that it was worth more to him and graciously gave up her life for that to happen. So I thought it was very poetic and I thought it worked.
Yeah, it works from a character perspective too. This is a character who, I mean, she said sort of all along, I've got red in my ledger. This is a character who's got a past that she's not proud of and who has tried to find a reason to see herself as something more, as something heroic, as something worthy. We get to see a glimpse of that in Avengers Age of Ultron when they're doing the party sequence and everyone's like, oh, do you want to pick up the hammer? Do you want to, who can pick up the hammer? And she just has this sort of line of like, nah, I wouldn't want to see what would happen. And it was basically her saying like, I don't think I'm even worthy enough to try it. So here we get to see this arc of this character who's always felt so torn down by her past, being able to do something, to do a heroic death in such a way that it saves the whole universe, and in some ways sort of balancing out all that red in her ledger, making her finally feel as though she's atoned, and in doing so, saving the life of her best friend and getting him reunited with his family ostensibly. So I love, this was a really good character-driven,
good hero moment,
into
right?
her arc. Yeah,
definitely a good hero moment. I thought
I
for her.
absolutely agree. I want to go back to something in the chat. I know we're bouncing all over, but the question about when Spider-Man Far From Home takes place. Jordan Riley says in the chat that Spider-Man movie actually takes place before Infinity War. Jordan, I love and adore you, but that is incorrect, my friend. Amy Pascal, an executive for Sony, said that Far From Home takes place a few minutes after the Endgame story wraps. So it definitely does take place after Avengers Endgame. And as Will said, we'll deal with some of the world building, right? Because we're now 5 years in the future because Tony chose to keep it, his daughter, he just brought everyone back to life in the present 5 years in the post-apocalyptic world. So, it'll be interesting to see the characters I guess dealing with the world kind of being in ruins and having to fix everything. But it is indeed after Endgame. FYI.
Yeah. And you got to think that that's looking forward to that one. And to one of the themes that I think is going to be interesting about what's next for all of these characters or everyone in the world, essentially. There's half of everyone just got set on pause and unpaused 5 years later. Whereas everyone else lived 5 years of survivor's guilt during that time. And so that's a really interesting world if you think about it. Like the world that now exists in here, you've got, and I know the math isn't going to be exactly right, but in theory, wouldn't that mean like half of Peter Parker's classmates, the people that would have been in his graduating class, are now in their early 20s and are thinking like have spent the last 5 years like trying to put together lives in this new world, whereas these people are just sort of like, well, now we got to go back to school and just sort of piece things together. That's an interesting world, right?
I'm curious about that, because in the trailer for Far From Home, I mean, we see all of his main friends like still the same age that they were. You know, like if Hawkeye's whole fucking family can disappear and die in the snapping, like I imagine at least some of Peter Parker's friends,
at least Ned did
too. Yeah.
And Zendaya, because I
mean, the only thing I can think of is all of his main friends like were snapped away as well and came back. I'm sure the movie's going to talk about that and set that up somehow, but I mean, I think it's perfectly legit for people to be scratching their heads like, wait a second, how does that work? So,
can we circle back to one quick thing?
Of course, yeah.
Thick Thor. I don't know. I didn't appreciate the way Thor's new physique was. A couple of those jokes I thought were a little bit kind of out of line and mean spirited, I thought. And that took me by surprise a little bit, especially from a body positivity standpoint, right? I don't know how you can defend some of those lines.
To be fair,
the melted ice cream line.
To be fair, Rocket is an asshole to everybody. He made fun of Carol Danvers' haircut. He made fun of Thor's body.
He wasn't the only one making. I mean, even
I know. I'm just saying.
The Cheeto character, I think, made a few.
Well, yeah, he was. What did he say? Like Cheeto grease coursing.
Captain Planet. Who is he again? He's Nightwing. What is his name?
He's Rhodey, I think, right? Don Cheadle?
Yeah, you did Don Cheadle. Oh, yeah. I was like, what do you mean, Captain Planet? I know exactly what you mean. That like
tree.
Yeah, remarkably hilarious.
Sorry.
I'm
ahead of you on the superhero jokes.
Yeah. I do have to say, they put some characters in some interesting places too. Like we got to see the scenes with. Like if I went into this movie thinking like, oh man, one of my most interesting pairings of this movie is going to be what happens when Rhodey and Nebula go off and do stuff together. I don't know that I would have necessarily believed you on that, but the sequence where they're basically kind of sharing about how like, yeah, this is what it's like to be like, to feel broken and feel repaired, like him between his legs and her from all of the robotics in her, not exactly the same things. But I do like that they were able to have like this bonding moment, and it felt like it pulled Nebula more into the team. I found myself for a movie that was about essentially about the 6 main Avengers. I felt like if you were to say like who was the 7th main character, I'd probably say Nebula. She was and I loved that. I loved seeing her in this movie. Like, so much. Hers has been one of the most interesting arcs in the entire MCU.
Well, it's interesting. Like I love Karen Gillan so much from Doctor Who, and when she showed up, in the Guardians movies initially, I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like they brought her in to be this fun little like one-off character that probably isn't going to play a very big role, but like, yay for Amy Pond in a Marvel movie, and she ends up probably being arguably one of the most important characters like to this whole shebang. So I love that she had so much to work with here, and. Guys, I feel like there's probably 100 more things we could talk about with this movie, but
it's such a rich.
It is.
Of course, it's a long movie, and it had a lot in there. I get it, but it was such a rich movie, and I think that's to its credit that it was able to be that dense, and cover that many characters and give them reasonably good to fantastic storylines. I think is to this movie's credit. I really would not be surprised, and I'm gonna make a bold prediction right now.
Do it. What is it?
This movie will be in the discussion at the end of the year for best motion picture.
Whoa, really?
Yep, it'll be in the discussion. I don't know if it'll make the short list of nominees. I also suspect the same thing for Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. I think his character. I thought his performance in this movie like made me finally stand up and say, "Oh wow, he's doing a good job as this character." Whereas in the other movies, I maybe dismissed it a little bit. So he could get some discussion about a supporting, or I would say maybe a supporting character.
I think it would be lead, because I think probably the 6 leads would be in the lead category of this one.
I think just the biggest question is whether or not the Academy loves him 3000. We'll have to see.
Oh, I love these characters 3000. I love the way that they've appeared on screen, and I love that we got such a caring, satisfying conclusion to this story. And I think that this particular movie, you talk about the box office stuff, and I think that's important. You also have to talk about just where this fits in kind of the legacy of film. Like, we've had franchises where most of the films are like technically in the same universe, but like, there's not a lot of overlap story to story. The Godzillas sort of do that, like they're in the same, but you don't have to follow through all of them. Or where you can look at each one as its own thing, like the James Bond movies. But here you've got this grand experiment that serialized movies in a way that is probably more akin to something like what J.J. Abrams was doing with Lost at the time than with anything that's happened in movies before. And it's pretty fascinating to see that it not only worked out, but it's really changed the landscape of film, of popular culture. I think that this film has done some things that we're going to be talking about for some time to come, because I don't know how well anyone's going to be able to replicate it. Even Marvel going into the next stage, I think that this is forever going to be kind of the thing that any future connected storylines they do is going to be compared to, and that's going to be a really hard thing for them to recreate.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Well, it has been a hell of a ride. 10 plus years, 20 plus movies, all culminating in this end game of a film, that kind of draws the original 6's story to a close question mark. We have a couple folks that are still going to carry on, though, right? Like Thor is now part of the as Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm interested to see what they continue doing with Thor on a comedic slant. Bruce Banner / the Hulk is still around, right? So has there been any word on if he's finally going to get his own movie? Or
I think that they're still under because of Universal has some of the rights for him, and I don't know if that's reverted yet, but that was the reason why they had to basically put Planet Hulk storyline at kind of like hide it inside of Thor Ragnarok. And I think that's also why his character probably is the one going into this next little bit. He feels like the most complete of like the characters that are still technically like kicking around as like potential storyline people. Like, I don't know where he goes from here.
So I guess Thor is going to be a big part maybe of the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 then, which I'm excited for.
Especially now that James Gunn's back on board.
I think that chemistry worked well in the movies that they've paired up. So I'd like to see more of that, as long as it's used, effectively and not overused. I think that could be really fun. I'm looking forward to that last Guardians movie.
They've got to do something, because like I don't want to. The way things are left with Gamora now being back, but it's not like original Gamora, it's out of time Gamora, so like she's not in love with Quill. Like I'm really hopeful that the third movie isn't like a complete retelling of their love story. I kind of hope it like picks up with them having figured that out off screen, and but I want to be careful, I guess, that Thor doesn't like take over the whole show, right? Because it is Guardians of the Galaxy. It should be their story. So hopefully he's part of it and he adds something fun without it like becoming.
You mean like kill off Quill in the first 5 minutes and have
and like replace him with Thor Lord? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
because public opinion of Chris Pratt is on the downswing and the other one's on the upswing, we'll just replace him.
It's interesting. Like, of the different main actors, you've had a lot of people like Robert Downey Jr. is like, yep, my contract's done, and Chris Evans, who was very big kind of going into this about like, I can't wait to start directing. And then you have people like Chris Hemsworth who are like, I still kind of want to do some of these. So you can tell that like the fact that he's also still on board means that there's a place for him, whether it be in the next as Guardians of the Galaxy, whether it be just they drop him off on some fucking planet somewhere, go about their own business, and he has a solo space adventure. I don't know. either way, I feel like now that we've kind of got it, they figured Thor out, kind of what to do with him. They figured out that he's the comedy of him is better than like his serious stuff. And I know that Taika Waititi has been kind of lightly talking about maybe coming back for another Thor movie, which I'd be good for. So yeah, I'm very excited to see more from this character, from all of these characters. Really, bring on Phase 4. I'm ready.
All right. Well, Spider-Man Far From Home is coming out just in a couple months here, right? So we'll see what happens as things carry forward from here. But definitely been a great conversation around Avengers Endgame. We do kind of got to wrap things up. I know we could probably talk about the movie for a couple more hours at least. And who knows? Maybe we'll return to talk about.
We'll have a part 2. We get a bad week. Let's talk about Endgame again.
Let's just reflect on Endgame, a month from now. But if folks want to keep talking Endgame or any other films between now and whenever our Avengers return about is, Jim, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. That's JJPOUTWEST, where I tweet about movies and hit me up, send me a message or something on there. Maybe we can follow each other. Wouldn't that be sweet? And then also find me on Facebook at under Jim Puliafico. That's my name. PULIAFICO, or one of Brad's friends.
Facebook friend stock. Yeah. All right. And Will, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. Just send me a message first so I know who you are. You can find me on Letterboxd. Search for me by name there as well. Very soon, you can find me in Tucson, where I'll be visiting some guys that I know.
And what's even better than just you visiting, Will, we were pretty fucking excited about that. Yeah. Now, our very own Magic Mike Lovins is going to be in town.
It's going to be a convergence of movie bears.
It's going to be our own like Avengers assemble, because Mike has since gone on to do his own podcast, Real Game Movies, and his partner Peter's going to be down here with him. And we haven't met Peter yet, so super stoked to hang out with all of you. I don't know if they're going to see Detective Pikachu with us. Will, it sounds like they may need to get back to Phoenix.
I think.
Yeah, but we definitely will be good to at least hang out, maybe have dinner or something. But yeah. But folks, you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. It's like iPad Pro, but Brad instead of Pad. And then I'm not very clever with Twitter handles, sorry. But you can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the Brad Harris with Chub Chaser Bear Friends in common with you. And yeah, we will see you all next week. Have a good week. Go see Avengers again if you have to. I kind of want to see it again. A little weird that I want to see this movie again.
Even I might want to see it again. That's really weird.
That's really weird, right?
Right.
So there you go. Putting the definitive Movie Reviews podcast stamp on Avengers Endgame. It's that good. Folks, we'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody. See you later.
Bye-bye.